American General Clark says Bakhmut, the area of the city there, is a meat grinder. The Russians led the Ukrainians into a trap. Defense lines were set up so that no one could escape. Ukrainian battalion commander says our losses are colossal. The former commander of NATO forces in Europe, American General Wesley Clark, described in black colors what's now happening in Bakhmut, without leaving room for misunderstandings. The well-known hawk of the US emphasized that the Russian army led the Ukrainians into a trap and now the region has turned into a meat machine. Unbelievable, and yet true. The CNN anchor was stunned to hear the American general use that term. And we can read also Wagner for Bakhmut. The operation is codenamed Meat Machine. We'll throw in 300 Ukrainian soldiers and then relentless pounding. In fact, photos from Bakhmut front show the Russians creating defensive lines around Bakhmut, surrounding it. The development is a nightmare for Ukrainians. General Surovikin, the commander of Putin, wants to provoke Ukrainians' attacks in order to cause even greater losses. The Russian staffs do not want anyone to escape from this meat grinder. For the first time during offensive operations, Russian army creates defensive works around the city. It's estimated that every day over 1,000 strikes are carried out against Ukrainian forces in and around Bakhmut with mortars, MLRS, artillery, and air force. That at the same time, the approaches to the city have practically turned into a desert. There are many videos you can watch here in this article. Former commander of NATO forces, General Wesley Clark, says, Putin led Ukraine into a trap. Putin led Ukraine into a trap, said the former commander. Wesley Clark. General Clark emphasized in his interview that the actions of the Russian army will force Ukraine to sit at the negotiating table. Bakhmut has turned into a huge meat grinder for Ukrainian armed forces, and the opposing sides are trying to somehow concentrate their fighting power. Therefore, they focused on Bakhmut. Taking it will give the Russians access to areas in Donbass, Kramatorsk, and Slaviansk. The city also serves as a sort of a sack of fire for exterminating Ukrainian forces. This is what the Russians are after, he said. If Russian troops take Bakhmut, Putin will win, General Clark said. Russian units are putting heavy pressure on the armed forces of Ukraine in Bakhmut. The Russians are suffocating them, making them bleed. And if the Ukrainian side calls for a ceasefire before their forces are reinforced from Kherson, that means Putin will win. If they take Bakhmut, then that will open the door to other areas, and it will also serve as a kind of springboard to wipe out Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainians dug in, held, but suffering heavy losses. The place has turned into a meat grinder, said the American general. Earlier, the deputy head of Donetsk, Denis Pushilin, said the Russian units are preparing to encircle Bakhmut. In the last few hours, Kiev has sent new formations into the city to reinforce its positions against the background of the high number of casualties. And as I said, there's various videos you can watch here. Ukrainian battalion commander says our losses are colossal. In the region of Bakhmut, Ukrainian authorities call it Bakhmut, Russian troops continue their attack against the positions of armed forces of Ukraine. The commander of the Ukrainian Svoboda battalion belonging to the National Guard of Ukraine, Peter Kuzik, emphasized that his unit is defending Bakhmut, but is being done in very difficult conditions. As Kuzik told British journalists, they have to fight in trenches from which there is not even the possibility and opportunity to remove the bodies. The soldiers stand knee-deep in water and the weather is freezing. When asked about these losses, the ranks of the Ukrainian army, Kuzik did not deny them and admitted their huge number, saying they're colossal. In Bakhmut, we don't even count the 2 centimeters anymore, said the commander of the Ukrainian battalion. I don't know what that means, 2 centimeters. Zelensky sends women to the front. Recently, some Ukrainian media, citing military correspondents, began to report a sharp increase in mortality among wounded soldiers of the Ukrainian Air Force and the directions of Kupiansk, Krasnolymansk, and Bakhmut. According to information, the cause was the lack of primary medical care. And today, the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine in that direction reached 500 people. As the press writes, the point is that is that wounded soldiers remained on the battlefield under proper medical care. No one evacuates them, since there is no one to do that, such a thing. So they can't take the wounded soldiers out. Zelensky ordered the seizure of NATO armored medical vehicles from the military medics of the armed forces of Ukraine, which were intended to evacuate the wounded. Now they carry ammunition with them and use them as armored personnel carriers. For example, the 30th Brigade on November 26 and 27, the losses mounted more than 250 soldiers who were left in the trenches. Local medical facilities are already overwhelmed with injured. Today, hospitals simply do not have enough beds, and the wounded are placed in corridors and warehouses. A few days ago, information appeared in the media that Ukraine mobilized more than 50,000 women due to the growing shortage of men. So now they don't have enough men fighting, they have to mobilize women to fight in the army. According to the Speaker of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Elena Kadratyuk, more than 50,000 women serve in the armed forces of Ukraine. Of these, more than 3,000 are of the front lines. And this I've translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.